Good morning, brothers and sisters, to another fun stream with myself, the other Paul. Now, you might be wondering, Paul, why are you using this old intro of yours? I decided that for more fun, less formal, less serious streams, I'm going to use just my simple old countdown intro because playing this absolutely grand, like just consider this. Just imagine this happening. I won't play the whole thing. But just seeing this grand, beautiful, substantive theological intro, and then seeing what happens right after. The boys, it's the other Paul. Welcome to our chill stream, boys. Yalla habibi. It just doesn't fit thematically at all. So the simple countdown is going to be my go-to for the for chill streams. Whereas the big awesome intros for the more formal topical streams and what have you. So yeah, how are you after all the drama? I am swell. Glory to God. I came out of that all just fine. It was fun, and I think it was actually a great success in that light. I have successfully pushed the envelope for spicy discussions about World War II history. I won't say a lot more just in case YouTube decides to get on my tail. But in any case, good to see you people here. Be really careful, Paul. Michael Lofton posted a meme of himself as Leonidas with the caption, "Me, if anyone misrepresents the Catholic Church, stay safe out there, bro." Yeah, bro, I am literally shaking right now. I feel like Lofton, he's just going to teleport behind me. He's like, "Nothing personal, dog," and then just like decapitates me instantly. Oh man, give it to the papists. Hell yeah, border. Speaking of the papists, next week stream with Christian Wagner on myths about Roman Catholicism. That's going to be fun. I only call it Roman Catholicism, that one, to kind of make it amenable to the widest audience of Roman as possible as well, to kind of bridge that gap just a little bit. Otherwise, though, Romanism, what have you, that's my go-to. Good morning, Kowalski, absolute legendary supporter. Hope you're well. Matt, good to see you too. And likewise, Michael Drew, Gabriel, good to see you too. Matt Scarpelli, good morning to you. Jack Ray, you absolute legend. You had a spicy stream. No, not a spicy stream, a spicy tweet. I forget if you're on Twitter or not, Jack, but if you're on there, my account's locked at the moment, but if you already follow me, you'll be able to see it. If you just scroll down a little bit down my timeline, you'll see the tweet. I mean, you'll know instantly. I'll just summarize it here. I called for the sober allowance of open debate of dissenting opinions on World War II history, and that people should not be anathematized and socially destroyed or even imprisoned in some countries for airing those opinions. That's all I'm going to say. Completely airtight point, completely irrefutable. And thankfully, lots of people agreed. Lots of people stood by me. Lots of people and all that jazz. But of course, I had a number of haters too, who I do genuinely believe that tweet was both an IQ test and a morals test. Like, if someone is actually has moral fortitude or moral foundations. It was a great test for that. But in any case, what is happening today? Well, brothers and sisters. Okay, Michael Drew, we are not going to have that Fed posting here. Thank you very much. Oh, it looks like, hang on. Looks like YouTube already kind of censored that comment. All right, that's good. Well, yes, Michael, StreamYard did show that comment to me, but thankfully YouTube kind of automatically. Interesting how YouTube can detect it when you do that kind of thing. Interesting. But yeah, no Fed posting. But yes, it is nonetheless, there is an element of truth to it nonetheless. And that's another part of the conversation that needs to be opened up as well. The idea that we can't speak of people of certain backgrounds and certain interests as having interests in their group, and that they could use it maliciously. This is just a fact of human history. The Bible talks all about this nation in general is bad and sinful for these reasons. So in principle, it's not wrong. The question is whether you're actually accurately talking about such people. In any case, we are going to be completely ignoring that and going on to today's stream. Actually, really quickly. Hi, mate. I am seriously considering Anglicanism because I find Eucharistic liturgy is so basic in most Reformed churches, but I can't find an Anglican church with Reformed theology. Keep looking, brother. You will find one. Well, depending on where you are, I may know people who can help you out with that. And I think there's actually someone who contacted me recently who's actually making a map of good churches, which includes Anglican ones. So yeah, first live other Paul stream for me. Let's go. Hey, excellent, man. Good stuff. Good stuff. But yes, in any case, what is happening today, brothers and sisters? Well, we are reviewing this thing of absolute beauty, the Jerome Biblical Commentary for the 21st century. Now, as I've mentioned elsewhere, I am also making a blog post on this volume, which is paired with a blog post by Pilgrim Theology on his Substack, where he did a post already on the first edition of this, which came out in 1968. This is the latest edition, the third, from 2022, so barely a year old, and third edition of this one-volume commentary on the whole Bible. And what's fascinating about it, well, the series, all three editions were of this Jerome Biblical Commentary are meant to be representative of Roman Catholic scholarship, okay, about the Bible. Excuse me. What's special about this one? Well, they've all of them have had serious weight of approval in the Roman hierarchy. First edition was approved by a major cardinal, a really weighty cardinal. But what's special about this edition is that it's the first and only one with a direct forward endorsement by the Pope himself, which is very significant, at least in a practical way. Now, of course, there's already been some people when I posted about this who kind of screeched like, "Oh, Paul, this foreword in a book isn't like popes have a bunch of popes have done forewords for books before. That's not in the magisterium. It's not even low in the magisterium. It's not magisterial at all." Yes, I get that. I know the categories of authentic magisterium, ordinary magisterium, extraordinary, so on and so forth. I know about that. It's not technically within those categories. However, my issue is that I don't think Pope Francis really cares about those precise categories. Someone told me somewhere in a plain flight thing that everything he writes and says as the Pope, which is interesting. But what's more important is that putting those categories to the side, we're just looking at what is the actual practical thing on the face. Regardless of those categories, the practical thing on the face is that this commentary on the whole Bible is endorsed by the Pope. And it's not just endorsed as by Mr. Francis, the private theologian. It is endorsed, I'll open you up right now to the foreword, by the Holy See. Notice that the coat of arms, I think, or the emblem, whatever one, of the See of Rome, and the title, the Holy See. So this prima facie, on its face, this has been, look, again, putting aside the categories of ordinary magisterium, authentic, blah, 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 blah. Prima facie, on its face, this commentary has been endorsed by the See of Rome, which is very significant and should definitely worry people, including Romanists. And so one of the key paragraphs, actually, of endorsement in the thing, I'll read it right now. So this is from the third paragraph of the foreword. Quote, "It is now common for the Christian community to set aside moments to reflect on the great importance of the Word of God for everyday living. The various local churches have undertaken a wealth of initiatives to make the sacred scriptures more accessible to believers, to increase their gratitude for so great a gift, and to help them to strive daily to embody and bear witness to its teachings. This new Jerome Biblical Commentary, composed by an international team of Catholic scholars, is further evidence of this important movement in the church." Notice this commentary, and this is actually pointed out to me by the Pilgrim Theology guy. It's a really good catch. He isn't just saying that this is just Roman Catholic scholars just giving their opinion out to the wide scholarly world. He treats this commentary as part of as a movement within the church itself. So this is actually, according to Francis, reflective of the movement of exegesis and explication to the public of the Holy Scriptures within the church. which when we go into the content itself is very, very alarming, hugely alarming. And so that's the main thing I wanted to point out, just to put as a header for this whole stream, just to realize that this isn't just random Catholic scholars saying this or that. For one, there's many big name Roman Catholic scholars behind this, but most importantly, it's endorsed by the head honcho himself, Pope Francis. Only Jews should be interpreting the OT frame. Is this sarcasm? Surely this is sarcasm. All right, and okay, here's a funny thing. I'm glad you brought this up, Duckman. Just watched James White's review of it yesterday. Keen to hear your thoughts. Take a guess who actually brought this to his attention. I'll let you draw the dots together. But yes, I feel very proud of this. Now, brief backstory. I only found this because I was at one of my local Christian bookstores, and I was just walking and I kind of glanced over in the commentary section in the one-volume commentaries, and I noticed this big one-volume commentary called the Jerome Biblical Commentary. I immediately just kind of like, for a split second, thought, oh, is this like reflecting Jerome's thoughts or patristic thoughts? But I quickly looked over, and it wasn't. It was just like a fancy name for for a big one-volume scholarly commentary. But what really raised my eyebrows is when I saw the front and it said foreword by Pope Francis. So that really interests me. So I looked it up after, and I found that this is actually a Roman Catholic scholarly commentary on the whole Bible with the foreword by Pope Francis. That's when I decided to look into it, like actually look at the volume. Before I bought it, I was just at the store and I opened up on the table, read through bits of it, and I was like, oh my word. Oh dear me. Even just looking at the table of contents, like we're going to start, the table of contents alone is a freaking roller coaster. I'll tell you guys that right now. It goes absolutely bonkers. And so that's when I knew, okay, I need to get this thing and we need to get some content, because I thought about it. How come I've never heard of this before? I mean, granted, it's relatively new, 2022, but I never even heard of the older editions in our online circles of Roman apologetics and prots and orthos and what have you, whether as something that Romanists can bring out, as, hey, look, our magisterium has commentaries that it's endorsed, or more likely, given the content, as ammunition by that prots or Easterners can use to say, hey, look, your magisterium's endorsing heresy. Because even in the first edition, the first edition is nowhere near as crazy as the third edition, but it is very, very, very heavy on higher critical scholarship, JEPD, all that jazz. And because the main editor of the first edition was none other than Raymond E. Brown, the guy who denied the virgin birth. So, but he's a Catholic scholar, and the introduction right after the foreword here absolutely praises Raymond E. Brown, which is absolutely hilarious, like absolute clown world. So I wondered, why have I never heard of this in our online apologetics? And I read through the content, and I basically immediately understand why I'd never hear of this from Romanists themselves. Because this stuff, like, honestly, I'm not even just saying, oh, look, this debunks Rome or whatever at the moment. But just like, look, this stuff is really scandalous. This is insanely scandalous for a pope to put his name behind. And so I understand that told me why I'd never heard of it from Romanists before. But I was also even curious, like, why I'd never even heard of it from just like regular any apologists in the online circles from those who are against Rome. So that was curious to me, and perhaps it's precisely because Romanists themselves never brought much attention to it. But now I hope that I do bring this to the wider public's attention, and I already started that by basically informing good Dr. James White himself, and he brought it out on the dividing line. So that alone is going to tell a lot of people about this, and I hope to do my thing about it as well, and give you guys some examples of just what this commentary teaches. Just because the official pope, who is officially head of the church, who officially endorsed this teaching, does not mean Francis' official teaching, bruh. So true. Mitch, good to see you, bruz. For he is not a Jew who is one outwardly, nor is circumcision that which is outward in the flesh, but he is a Jew who is one inwardly, and the circumcision is that of the heart in the spirit, not in the letter, whose praise is not from men, but from God. Amen and hallelujah to that. So it wasn't crazy enough, so they kept amping it up on purpose. Yeah, and actually I found, or I was shown, an interview with some of the editors where one of them said straight up, look, the first edition was like super conservative. It wasn't liberal enough. And so the third edition is correcting that. And that first edition was already insanely liberal with its higher critical methodology. No comment. In any case, I reckon we get right to it. So just let me take another sip. So that's the stakes of this thing. This thing is freaking bonkers. I'm going to read first. So I'm going to go into the intro first, and I'm going to read some of the last paragraph. Okay. So here's something interesting. So this is how the editors themselves conceive of their project. So I'm just reading the second last and the last paragraph of the introduction after the foreword. This project began shortly after Cardinal Jorge Mario Bergoglio was elected as Pope Francis, the 266th pontiff of the Roman Catholic Church. Right from the start, it was clear that he would be a unique leader of the church, the first Latin American to hold the office, the first pope who was a Jesuit, the first to select the name of Francis with its obvious meaning of a commitment to the poor, characteristic of this remarkable church leader. Also evident about Pope Francis is his intense love for the scriptures. Every discourse, every homily, every prayer of this pope is drenched in the language and spirit of the scriptures. His first major statement, The Joy of the Gospel, is filled with biblical spirit and dedicates a long section to urging priests and deacons to renew their preaching through study and love of the scriptures. It is not surprising that Pope Francis will be the one to dedicate the third Sunday of Ordinary Time as Word of God Sunday, a time, as the Pope himself put it, for Christians to make room in their lives for the Word of God. We hope that this volume also will make room for the scriptures in the minds, hearts, and lives of our readers. We dedicate this work to Pope Francis and his ministry of the Word. We are grateful and honored that with his permission, Pope Francis' own reflections on the beauty and the power of the scriptures form the preface to this new Jerome Biblical Commentary for the 21st century. There you go, from his with his own permission. Fascinating, absolutely fascinating there. So these own editors themselves consider themselves as this isn't merely like dry academic scholarly stuff, but actually part in their minds of Pope Francis's project to open up the scriptures to laymen across the world in the Roman Catholic Church. So that alone is highly, highly fascinating. Now I'm going to move to the table of contents because this, whoopsie daisies, is a bit further back actually. All right, here we go. Right at the start. Now, by the way, as an aside, purely on a scholarly level, I'm sure this commentary will actually be useful just for gleaning sources and other ideas and what have you. So I may actually use it in that respect. Otherwise, though, from looking at its takes on spicy passages, my word, this thing is awful. But nonetheless, so it's got a bunch of introductory articles on biblical geography, archaeology in the Old Testament, archaeology in the New Testament, Israel and Judah, history and society, Judaism in the time of Jesus, the historical Jesus, and early Christianity in context. So some basic introductory articles. And then after that, the bulk of the work is commentaries on every book of the Bible in order. So Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, etc., etc., etc. But it also includes introductions to the major sections. So the 5 books of Moses, they're headed up with an introduction to the Pentateuch, and then after that is an introduction to the historical books, and then an introduction to wisdom literature, so on and so forth. But what's most interesting to me is when it gets to the part 4 general articles, so those that come after the main commentary. They are as follows. The Bible and Catholic tradition, according to the scriptures, biblical interpretation prior to 1600. This is actually a cool historical one. I actually gleaned through it. It's pretty interesting. The next one, interpreting the scriptures, the church and the modern Catholic biblical renewal. So basically what's happening now with biblical interpretation in the Roman church, and the Bible as sacred scripture, revelation, inspiration, and canon. Now, I haven't fully read this one, but I'm very interested to see what liberalism they put in there. Now, the next section, this is where it really gets fun. Feminist biblical interpretation. The Bible and social justice. Literary approaches to the Bible. And then African and African American biblical interpretation. Oh, and the Asian American approaches to the Bible. And then I'm not even going to read this from the table of contents. I'm just going to open it straight up and show you. So there's the page. I'll open it up there right now. He's ready? He's ready? Latink's biblical interpretation, boys. Oh my gosh, praise high heavens. We have been enlightened with the Latink's biblical method. Oh man. Oh man, this was honestly when I saw this, when I first saw that, I freaking lost it. I absolutely Oh my word. Oh, this is beautiful. This is absolutely beautiful. This is the kind of stuff in this commentary. This should give you an idea of what you are to expect in this wild piece of work. Now, before we continue, I would like to plug my, if I can find the window, I would like to plug my locals. So far, I've put the subscribe star on an indefinite break, so I've kind of gone back to square one with supporters. Got 2 legendary supporters right now. Shout out to you, absolute legends. Yo, it's rough. Yo, that's rough. And Kowalski. Absolute legends who are supporting their locals right now. If you want to help me with my channel and get some cool benefits on your part, such as, for example, supporter streams, which we just had our first one very recently, then go on, become a supporter right now at locals. And one particular benefit for this stream is that I will be taking audience requests for biblical passages to look up in this commentary to get the papally approved interpretation of that biblical passage. Because, hey, this is exactly what we Prots have been asking for so long. That's something I forgot to mention a bit earlier about how, oh, look, if papacy is so infallibly authoritative, then why don't they just publish a definitive commentary on the whole Bible? This isn't quite that in terms of magisterial authority, but it's functionally the best we got. And this is what the papacy gives us. So if you guys want priority, like everyone can suggest Bible passages for me to look up, but if you want priority in biblical passages for me to look up in this stream, in the commentary, become a supporter on locals at any price today, right now. Do it. Do it. Okay, so plug is done. Now, what I intend to do is I may show off 1 or 2 examples of, I may show one example of a insane take from this commentary, and then I'll let you and the audience give me suggestions, give me requests for what you guys want to see from this commentary, what you guys want me to look up. So just to give you one example, I actually took photos of some parts of the commentary. So I'll just show a photo. just to make it easier, of one particular part in the commentary. So, again, this is from within the commentary, and it regards Leviticus chapter 18, verse 22. Now, word of warning, it's a little bit graphic. So, if you have children, put them away for now. Okay. Whoopsie daisies. Quote, Leviticus 18:22-23 similarly prohibits sexual practices that do not produce offspring for the community, anal penetration between two males or intercourse with an animal. Leviticus 18:22 does not speak about the modern concept of homosexuality or homoeroticism, which in general was not known as a possible sexual orientation in antiquity. The anal penetration of a male by a male was a way to denigrate the penetrated one, to humiliate strangers or the inferior party in warfare. See Genesis 19 and Judges 19. Thus, the Bible does not speak about same-sex love as one does today. The major interest of Leviticus 18:22 and 20:13 is to assure that males procreate offspring for the community. Hence, it is hermeneutically inappropriate to use these verses and similar passages in the Bible to ostracize homosexual males. Wow. What a take. What a beautiful take. That's just the tip of the iceberg, ladies and gentlemen. So, I want people here. Send me your suggestions, send me your requests of what you want me to look at in the commentary, and I'll open right up to it. I'll open right up to it, and I will look at the commentary. And again, priority for locals supporters or for super chats. All right. So if you're a local supporter or a super chat, you have priority right now with the thingo, with biblical passages. But otherwise, everyone send in your biblical passage requests right now, even if you're not a supporter or a super chatter, and I will star it so I can actually look at it. And then I will go to it eventually if you're a free person. So I see one right now from a non-supporter. I'll wait a couple of seconds in case any of my current supporters want to give requests first. So I'll just give that just a minute, just chill for a minute. If not, then I will go straight to Gabriel's request of Matthew 16:18. Now that's a good question. I'll definitely star this one as well. We'll take a look at that because there are introductions to the various books, and they do, of course, talk about authorship. And I already looked at one of them. James 2:26. Okay. You're gonna need to be specific because he does that in a few places. Mr. Titus. Gosh, I love this. Okay. I'm just gonna change something. What's up, Harrison? How are you? I am pretty good myself. And here we go. So we have my legendary supporter, Kowalski. He wants to see the commentary on Ephesians 6:5. Okay. Yes, Romans 1:26-27 as well. I've got a screenshot for that, so that should be easy. At what point does love morph into sin? Well, when it becomes sin. Love isn't an abstract. To do something sinful is by definition not love. So yeah, as soon as you do something sinful, that's just not loving. Okay, so I've got a supporter one, and wow, I've got a number of requests here. So okay, better get right to it. So we will start with my legendary supporters request of Ephesians 6:5. So let's open up to there. Okay. I may have to put a bookmark on the flipping table of contents just so I can easily open up to it whenever I need. Okay, so Ephesians is on page. Where are they, Ephesians? There it is, Ephesians 16:63. All right, so open up to page 16:63. Ooh, very close. Honestly, I might get you know what I might do? I might actually buy Bible tabs or something and just put it for the different sections of the commentary. That'd honestly be so useful. All right, so we are looking at the papally approved interpretation of Ephesians 6:5. So I'll just jump right there. Let's see. It's a little bit loosey-goosey. 6:3, Paul instructs, blah, blah. Okay. Next on the docket, so it's talking about the household code in Ephesians 6:5. And he's talking about the three pairs of relationships. So wives and husbands, children and parents, slaves and masters. So next on the docket are slaves and masters, 6:5-9. Like children, slaves, both male and female, are enjoined to obey their human masters as to Christ. By making a comparison to Christ, Paul seems to be giving a Christological rationale to the institution of slavery. Oh dear. A slave's subservience is to be given with fear and trembling. How jarring this must have sounded to the slaves, especially knowing, as they probably did, that this same apostle had proclaimed earlier, for freedom in Christ has set us free. For freedom, Christ set us free. Did hearing that they are slaves of Christ open the door to their transformed status in the ecclesia, and hence to freedom in Christ, meaning a freed person in society? Rather than be people pleasers, the slaves are to do the will of God from the heart. Again, did they wonder whether their status as slaves was consistent with God's will? Would the next injunction, being willing to serve the Lord and not human beings, have given them license to demand their freedom, even to start an uprising, a not uncommon disturbance by the slaves of Rome? Taking the long view, Paul then reminds them of what they already know, namely that the Lord will judge all, slave and free, according to the good one does. Among the free are slave masters, who will be held accountable. This would relate specifically to how they have treated their slaves and perhaps whether they provided for their manumission. The ecclesia, and especially slave masters, must have been shocked to hear Paul command the latter to do good and stop bullying their slaves. This would imply an end to threats of beating, sexual harassment, and inhuman treatment of any kind. The rationale for such a decisive change of behavior is the real master in heaven will treat all the same, showing no partiality. Some contemporary commentators are understandably disturbed, one author even calling this blasphemy, when Paul, by analogy, uses the same Greek term for heavenly master, the true master of slaves and free persons, that has been used for slave owners. God does hold slave owners accountable, yet Paul does not go further and command them to love their slaves or even to free them. Nor does he require in this letter slave owners to accept them as brothers and sisters. See Philemon 16. The previous call for egalitarianism has seemingly been reduced to a mere whisper, if that. For centuries, Ephesians 6:5-9 has been used to justify slavery. Tragically, slavery still here comes the activism. Tragically, slavery still flourishes today, with almost 30 million held in bondage through forced labor, trafficking of women and children, and the coercive use of their bodies for the international sex trade. While Paul does not call for an end to slavery, there are sufficient indicators in this passage that cry out against the demonizing practices of this institution. One final note, some commentators take Paul to task for his frequent use of the term slave as a metaphor for total dedication and complete allegiance to Christ. The wisdom of Paul's venture in co-opting and transforming the metaphor of slavery into a positive religious sense will undoubtedly continue to be debated. Interesting. So not as awful as I was expecting, but definitely a lot of sus points, especially the activism and how it's like, but it's kind of shocking how, like, Paul just said Christ has set us free, but then people are also still slaves. Like, this seems to kind of conflict. You'd only have that when you aren't able to make distinctions and when you hold to a modern worldview, basically. So that was our first. Excuse me, sorry, I just got issues with my nose right now. That was the first look at the papally approved interpretation. Leroy, I hope your noose has been reassured of the infallible interpretation. It's a joke, by the way. Papers, calm down. It's a joke. Of the infallible interpretation of Ephesians 6:5. Commentary was okay this one, but yeah, of course they had to bring activism into it. Yep, 100%. Okay, so to Mystic Monster, you legend. Thank you so much for this $5. Romans 11:29 is the old covenant revocable. CCC, the Catechism of the Catholic Church, seems to say Jews can be saved without conversion. 2 Thessalonians 2:4, do they believe the temple will be rebuilt? Okay, let's go there. Romans 11. Okay. Romans is 1528. All right, so page 1528. So 1129, you said? Okay. Okay. Now, something weird about the commentary as well. It's a bit inconsistent in how the different commentators for different books format it. Like some format it a bit better. Like the Romans commentary more systematically like quotes the biblical the biblical verse and then comments on it. But some of them just kind of flow through it like without dividing it up. So it's a bit hard to navigate. But thankfully this one does. Okay. So it quotes Romans 11:28-29. In respect to the gospel, they are enemies, but in respect to election, they are beloved because of the patriarchs, for the gifts and the call of God are irrevocable. And then this is where the commentary goes. Because of their present failure to accept Jesus as Messiah, non-Christ believing Jews temporarily have made themselves enemies of God. Yet they remain among God's beloved, see 1:7, for the sake of their ancestors. The election of Israel is irrevocable in human history, manifested in the favor shown to its patriarchs, a claim that Gentiles lack. Readers should be careful to ensure that nothing in Romans is construed as in such a way as to contradict or undercut Paul's summary assertion, reaffirmed in such ecclesiastical documents as Vatican Council II, Nostra Aetate, and the Commission for Religious Relations with the Jews. The gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable, a reflection of theological questions pertaining to Catholic-Jewish relations on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of Nostra Aetate. So, okay, so I think that's the key phrase here. Election of Israel is irrevocable in human history, manifested, blah, blah, blah. Readers should be careful to ensure that nothing in Romans is construed in such a way as to contradict or undercut Paul's summary assertion. Yep. So there you go. That's what it says there. I hope I was clear with pronouncing that. And then you also point to 2 Thessalonians 2:4, so we can jump there. Okay, 2 Thessalonians 2:4. Okay. Okay. Refutation, the lawless one must first be revealed, then destroyed. In the first subunit, verses 3-7, the enigmatic figure called the lawless one has laid claim to the place of God. He opposes and exalts himself above every so-called God and object of worship so as to treat himself in the temple of God, claiming he is a God. The first commandment in Exodus 20 prohibits any form of idolatry, and the author forcefully reminds his addressers about the constant need to prevent it. He continues his argumentation by pointing out the identity of the lawless one has not been made known. This is so because he is somehow being restrained by another mysterious figure who is holding him back. Although there are many diverse theories, there is still no agreement about the identities of the two contrasting figures. Some scholars think of the lawless one in rather general terms: apostasy, schism, heresy, military battles and wars, while others think it refers to a particular person, such as King Antiochus IV, the monarch named in Daniel 11, one of the many false prophets found in some first century apocalyptic texts, any one of the several Roman officials like Pompey, the general who conquered Palestine in 63 BCE, or Caligula, etc., etc., etc. Although the identity of this mysterious figure could be a figure in Jewish or Roman history, it is also quite possible that a more cosmic or universal interpretation is more fitting. The mystery of lawlessness could refer in general to Satan, who vigorously battles against the church. Although the term Antichristos, Antichrist, is not found in the Pauline corpus, nevertheless, some exegetes identify the lawless one of 2 Thessalonians as the Antichrist referred to in 1 John 2:18. In the meantime, however, the lawless one is held back by a force and a living being who restrains him. Since Tertullian at the start of the 3rd century, the traditional hypothesis has identified them as the Roman Empire and its emperor. Perhaps Gordon D. Fee's suggestion would be wisest to follow. Wait and see. That's actually a pretty good ending there. All right. So, there you go. You got your assured papal thingo there. Relatively tame, this section in particular. Roman dispensationalism strong in this one. Absolutely. All right. What else have I got lined up? So I'm going to look at some free ones now. So Matthew 16:18. Let's go take a look there, shall we? So Matthew 11:68. Oops. So we keep that up here. A lot of words, not really is to not really take a clear position, just as I expected. Thank you. Not a problem, friend. All right. Matthew 16:18. Let's jump there. It's on page 1168. All right. Oh, that's in Mark now. Suddenly jumped over to Mark. All right. All right, here we go. Here we go. Okay. Well, the positive character of Peter's confession is clear from the beatitude Jesus utters in response. Peter speaks not out of ignorance, but by divine revelation, and receives a new role in return. This uniquely Matthean material contains several Semitic expressions, the name Bar Jonah, flesh and blood, the wordplay on Peter and rock, which presupposes the Aramaic kephah, and may well reflect pre-Matthean tradition, perhaps from Antioch, where Peter played a key role. The new name given to Simon, Peter or Rock, hints at a new people coming to birth. It recalls God's renaming Abram as Abraham, the foundational patriarch described by Isaiah as the rock from which Israel was hewn. Though this rock could refer to Peter's confession, see, for example, Origin, or the Christ, or the Christ that Peter confesses, such as Augustine, most likely Peter himself is the rock. So there's the one trad take that I've found so far in this commentary. Most likely Peter himself is the rock. See Pseudo Clement Homily 1719. Christ the new Solomon builds his temple, his church, on Peter as rock. The gates of the netherworld, i.e. the gates of Hades or Sheol, the abode of the dead, will not prevail over it, either the rock or more probably Christ's church. Matthew may have in mind the unlocking of the gates to the underworld, allowing the powers of evil to ascend upon the earth. That is interesting. Like Abraham before him, Simon Peter is to play a unique role in salvation history. As Christ's new people come to birth, the uniqueness is underscored by the promised gift of the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Here's the interesting one for those who follow these circles. Like Eliakim, who replaced Shebna as a steward of the royal house from Jerusalem and received the key of the house of David, Peter will receive keys enabling him to open and shut. Or, to change the metaphor, he will have authority to bind and loose, authority which will later be extended to all the disciples, 18:18. So there you go. Interesting. A bit of a equal pan-apostle interpretation of the keys from the Papally-Approved Commentary. All the apostles are equal in power confirmed, ladies and gentlemen. Pope says so. These are rabbinic terms for halakhic decisions over what is forbidden or permitted, a prerogative claimed by the scribes and the Pharisees. However, in their harsh interpretation of Mosaic law, they lock the kingdom of heaven before human beings. Peter, by contrast, is to use the keys wisely as a kind of chief rabbi of the new community. So, there you go. Interesting. So, very liberal commentary on the whole, as we're going to see more later, especially. So it's not exactly emphatic on papal claims. Hey, Jeff, good to see you, mate. Good to see you. Okay, so what's the next one? I hope your Gabriel, I hope your noose was enlightened by that interpretation. This may get fun. For that matter, do they even think Matthew wrote Matthew? Let's find out, shall we? All right. Tradition names the evangelist as Matthew the Apostle, whom this gospel identifies with a tax collector from Capernaum, named Levi by Mark and Luke. A key witness is Papias, 2nd century bishop of Hierapolis in Asia Minor, preserved in the 4th century church historian Eusebius. Matthew compiled the sayings, Greek logia, in the Hebrew or Aramaic language or style, and everyone interpreted or translated them as they were able. Papias' statement is ambiguous, i.e. the logia could refer to Jesus' sayings or to a collection of OT oracles or prophetic proof texts. However, the assumption of several early fathers was that Matthew wrote the earliest gospel in Hebrew or Aramaic for Jewish converts. Yet our gospel of Matthew shows every indication of being composed in Greek, not a Hebrew or Aramaic original. Moreover, its substantial dependence upon Mark's account makes it unlikely that this gospel is the work of an apostle or eyewitness. If logia refers to sayings of Jesus or a collection of OT prophecies, then the traditional attribution may reflect the memory that one of our evangelist sources was connected to Matthew the apostle. It is possible nonetheless to derive a broad picture of the gospel's implied author from the text. The gospel suggests the follower of Jesus who remains committed to his Jewish origins, familiar with OT texts in Hebrew and Greek, possibly Aramaic targums, as well as Jewish ritual practices and rabbinic patterns of scriptural exegesis, and keen to show how Jesus' teaching upholds the law rather than transgressing it. He may therefore have been a scribe, like the gospel scribe, instructed in the kingdom of heaven. His preference for city over village, as in Mark, suggests an author with an urban perspective. He is sympathetic to the Gentile mission, though as one committed to Israel's priority in the history. As a place of writing, Jerome locates the evangelist in Judea, close to where the events took place. However, this may be no more than a deduction from the gospel's strong Jewish flavor, or papias in Hebrew language. Some modern scholars also locate the evangelist in or near the Holy Land. Proposals include Caesarea Maritima or the Mediterranean coast, Sepphoris, Tiberias, or Capernaum in Galilee, and Pella in Decapolis. So on and so forth. Nonetheless, that's the key comment we want to look at. Its substantial dependence upon Mark's account makes it unlikely that this gospel is the work of an apostle or eyewitness. Very sus indeed. Of course, lots of assumptions there of what an eyewitness necessarily does. That he must necessarily always use new material, must formulate new material, and he can't just think, hey, you know what, this other author, he did this event that I witnessed pretty well, he composed it well, so I'm just going to take what he says, put it in mind, work it in a new way. Not to mention the hypothesis that the apostles wrote common notes and particularly the synoptic gospels, and drew from those same notes. Countless situations, there's countless possibilities, and that doesn't overthrow the total and unanimous church witness that Matthew wrote this gospel. Whereas by contrast, there are truly anonymous texts like Hebrews, for example, with conflicted authorship, among others. Yeah, very interesting. Able to Zechariah, Matthew 23 will be a good one too if you're checking the seat of Moses. Okay, let me. Big oof seems totally contrary to Providentissimus Deus. Seems so, yeah. Oh, Judith and Tobit intros. Yeah, I can look at that too. I believe they have it. That's a good point. Sometimes, at least. Matthew 16, 7, 13 to 14. Why do I expect sophistry there? 1 Corinthians 6, 9. Look at that. Fire, there's a lot. Oh, 1 Timothy 2, 11 to 15 will be a fascinating one. Okay, so I've got to look at these. I've got to try and look at these in the order I find. Fire, there are so many suggestions that people want. If they're saying that Matthew most likely did not write Matthew as well as the belief that he did his church tradition, is this explicit admission that church traditions can be erroneous? I mean, logically, like just by logical deduction, then yeah, I guess. Do 2 Thessalonians 2:15. Yep, I'll star that. Okay, where do we start? What's the earliest one? I think this is the next earliest one. Let me just scroll up to confirm. Yes, it is. Okay, so James 2:26. Let us take a look at that. There we go. 2:26. Where is it? 6. It's weird. It goes to 25. Okay. Oh, okay. Here we go. This is interesting. At the heart of actually, I'll read one paragraph earlier. Further biblical support is offered. What for though? For okay, so basically James's argument: demonstrate your faith to me without works, and I will show you my faith by my works, etc. So here's a paragraph. Further biblical support is offered by referring to the prostitute Rahab, whose action of hospitality saved the lives of the Israelite messengers who came to Jericho. In the biblical account, Joshua 2:1-21, her hospitality stems from her faith confession in the God of Israel, Joshua 2:11. In Jewish and rabbinic traditions, Rahab's figure held a significant position. Early Christian tradition also holds her in high esteem. She is listed among Jesus' ancestors in Matthew 1:5. Hebrews 11:31 praises her. By faith, Rahab the harlot did not perish with the disobedient, for she had received the spies in peace. And 1 Clement 12:1 unites her faith and hospitality. At the heart of the hospitality lies James's concern for those who are poor. Throughout chapter 2, James has urged his community to support those who are less fortunate than themselves. For James, these actions of hospitality are further examples of his call to care for widows and orphans, 127. James concludes his argument by referring back to 2:14 and 2:17 with the statement, just as a body without the spirit is dead, so also faith without works is dead. For James, the only true faith is one that is alive, demonstrating itself in good works. We Prots very much love that interpretation. Amen. Actually, I'm gonna look specifically at the key thing. Justified. Okay. Here we go. Blah, blah, blah. Be doers of the law. Blah blah blah. Bonnie of Isaac. Faith and works. Faith inspires works. Okay. A circular movement develops between faith and works. Faith inspires the works and is active together with the works, while in his interaction, faith is brought to completion and maturity. Abraham believed God and it was reckoned to him as righteousness. The passive use of logizomai emphasizes God's judgment of Abraham's righteousness because of his living faith illustrated in his actions. Notice that faith illustrated in actions. Very interesting. This identification is intentional. In James 4:4, Abraham go on. Okay, James 2:24 answers the question raised in 2:14. Faith demonstrates its real nature through the works it performs. Ek pisteos monon. Not by faith alone means without the aid and cooperation of works. So that's what not by faith alone means, without the aid and cooperation of works. It shows that faith cannot be conceived without a life lived by good works. While the letter of James has frequently been interpreted as written in opposition to Paul and his teaching on faith alone, see the introduction, James is in fact not in opposition to Paul's viewpoint. Paul and James share a common vocabulary, but with different intentions. Paul's concern is to argue that justification comes through faith and not through works of the Jewish law. James' concern is to oppose an empty faith with a faith that is alive, blossoming forth into action. Paul and James have individual concerns arising from their communities. They are addressing these concerns rather than attacking each other. Protestantism vindicated, boys and girls. Hey, the Pope said it, guys. The Pope approved this comment, guys. I don't make the rules. Sorry. False only is opening essays magisterial. As long as Francis wasn't sitting in a special chair when he wrote the foreword, it doesn't count, Paul. Oh, of course. Oh, man. This is literally Lutheran. Yeah, straight up. Well, there you go, guys, ladies and gentlemen. The papally-approved commentary that clarifies everything for us. Answer the question on the book of James and justification. There you go, boys and girls. There you go. So let me unstar some of these. Let's look at do 1 Corinthians 6:9. Okay, let's go there. Zechariah. Oops. It's 2 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians. All right. As in other matters earlier in the letter, Paul shows his concern for the integrity of the community in the last verses of the section. In chapter 6, verses 9-11, after calling attention to how having lawsuits is committing wrongdoing and injustice, Paul asserts that wrongdoers will not inherit the kingdom of God. He then lists a catalogue of wrongdoers and notes that before their baptism, the Corinthians were counted among them. In baptism, they were washed, sanctified, justified by the faith of Jesus Christ. Therefore, litigation before Corinthian magistrates is a return to their pre-baptismal states. Since the holy ones will in the end time judge the world, and angels, they have the power to settle insignificant lawsuits within the community. So, very interesting. Doesn't address the homosexuality comments at all, which is curious given the bit I already read from Leviticus 18:22, and given another one that we're about to look at soon. I'm going to see if it actually... Does it ever mention it anywhere, or... That is genuinely curious. Because I actually did look at this earlier, so I didn't want to spoil it. But I was genuinely curious at how it never addresses the whole controversy on arsenokoites and homosexuality in this passage, where it just kind of leaves it pretty much. So very interesting that way. Very interesting. Yeah, we won, guys, for the James 2 passage, oath. Okay. Now let's go to the fun one. Romans 1:26-27. Oh, you boys are going to love this. You are going to absolutely, well, boys and girls are going to absolutely love this. Oh, man. All right. Sit down for this one, guys. You're going to love it. All right. Because the pericope in Romans 1:24-27 has been used as a clobber text to denigrate persons with same-sex orientation, it is worth reminding the reader that such a use strips the text of its social and historical context and brings it to bear on an issue Paul's own audience would never have even imagined or understood. Paul's contemporaries would have been familiar with multiple types of exploitative sexual relationships, including pedophilia, prostitution, and slavery. In each case, such relationships reveal and inscribe abusive power structures. They have nothing to do with loving sexual relationships between consenting adults. Whatever contemporary moral arguments one wants to mount about same-sex relations, it is ethically irresponsible to use this passage in Romans 1 to close off contemporary explorations of the issue. Lad. Oh, lad. Oh, dear. Oh, dearie, dearie, dearie me. Here come the reactions. Oh, man. Oh, man. I'm just trying to see if he says any more. Okay, yeah. So there's a little bit more. The final paragraph in this section. Given the conventional nature of this type of ethical teaching, it is not surprising that this vice list evinces little particularly Jewish or Christian sensibilities until we reach 131, where those who violate divine wisdom are characterized as senseless, faithless, heartless, and ruthless. This last set of traits carries resonances of Micah 6:8, where the fundamental behaviors of Israelite covenant promise doing justice, loving mercy, and walking humbly with God. If one follows the traditional redaction critical rule that what is changed or repeated reveals the key themes the redactor wanted to emphasize, the third cluster of vices, those with economic justice focus, are exposed as most important for Paul's purposes in the letter. This reinforces a reading of 1:24-28 as referring not to consensual sex, but rather exploitative sexual behaviors that a contemporary audience would characterize as elements of human trafficking. Oof, lad. Woo! Yes. James White was also like gobsmacked by that as well. They actually put that term clobber passage for those unfamiliar, like the homosexual activists use that terminology. That's what they call these Bible passages, clobber passage. That is in a papally approved commentary, boys and girls. Oh dear. Lots of reactions here. Unreal. A lot said there wasn't said. That's bad. the big guru receives the imprimatur. Oof. Why I'm not surprised? Yes, the other societies condemned were simply not loving consensual practitioners of sodomy. This is papally approved. This commentary is, yes. Now, again, obviously, he's not saying I approve every single little thing in here, but that doesn't really matter. Just on its surface, he approved a commentary with comments like this in it. And this isn't isolated. This is everywhere. The liberalism is all over the joint. It's impossible that Pope Francis missed it, and he gave permission anyway. Even if I wanted to be Catholic, how on earth could I explain the Pope to my kids? Lol. Blessing same-sex unions? Can't do it. And pointing my kids to such a thing would be irresponsible to me, it seems. Yeah, true. Frank the hippie Pope. Oh, man. What does it say about questionable passages like Mark 16, 9-10, John 7, 53-8-11, 1 John, etc. Judith 1:1 that claims Nebuchadnezzar was the king of these things? I mean, honestly, you can probably assume that they take the normie mainstream takes on that, but maybe we'll look at that if I have time, because there's a lot more requests than I thought. Not gonna lie, I seriously doubt the Pope read the whole thing. Yeah, I doubt that too. But frankly, someone, no matter how big a book is, if you're going to be giving a forward endorsement to it, you do have the responsibility for your own integrity to read the whole thing. Frankly, if I was asked to give my own forward endorsement to a 2,000-page commentary like this, I would read the whole thing. Absolutely. Even if it took me bloody ages, really. Yeah, because this is about your name. You're putting your name to something, you know. But the thing is, though, it doesn't even require like having read the whole thing. Just like this thing is drenched on almost every page with liberalism. Just even looking at the table of contents where it talks about feminist biblical interpretation, the Tink's biblical interpretation, all that jazz. My word, it's a train wreck that is still in motion. Maybe this will push good Christian Catholics towards deeper faith while the rest go off a cliff. Perhaps, yeah, perhaps. Okay. We're gonna take a little detour. I'm gonna go to one. Let me just get rid of some of these. I am going to go to one in a section in one of the ending essays that is truly gobsmacking and genuinely abhorrent in what it's trying to imply. So let's just while justice has moved back. Here we go. Okay. Prepare for this. So this is in the sorry guys, 1 second. Okay. So this is in the essay Feminist Biblical Interpretation. Listen to these 2 paragraphs. Analysis of social constructions of gender has become a central feature of feminist biblical interpretation. One of the first to define the difference between sex and gender was Sarah Grimke, who recognized that sex is biologically determined while gender is socially constructed. She argued that intellect is not sexed, that strength of mind is not sexed, and that our views about the duties of men and women, duties of men and the duties of women, the sphere of men and the sphere of women, are mere arbitrary opinions differing in different ages and countries and dependent solely on the will and judgment of erring mortals. More recently, strap yourselves down for this. More recently, some feminists have developed reading strategies from lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer perspectives. They show how categories that emerged in recent centuries are applied anachronistically to biblical texts to make modern-day judgments. Some look for insight from same-sex relationships in the Bible by figures such as Ruth and Naomi or David and Jonathan. Examining texts in which figures transgress what is traditionally considered proper gender behavior is another approach used by such scholars. Same-sex relationships. Ruth and Naomi. David and Jonathan. Now, David and Jonathan, that is bad enough. But Ruth and Naomi, think about what was Ruth and Naomi's relationship? Stepmom, stepdaughter. And that's what they want to look at through a frame of degeneracy. This is in here. This is in here. This is in the representative biblical commentary of Catholic scholarship, approved by the Pope. This is really, really not good. Sweet home Alabama. That's exactly it. That is exactly what they're implying, whether they know it or not. I try to make a witty comment, but I'm genuinely too repulsed. Wow, I thought it would be bad, but this is horrible. Yep. Oi, everybody, Rabbit, good to see ya. Me, it would be awesome to have a magisterial biblical commentary which could infallibly define Azazel. What biblical passage is that in? If you can tell me that, I will go to there right now. Or, well, maybe after a couple of other suggestions. This is so bad, I'm not even going to dunk on the trads. Yeah, honestly, I'll stand in arms in like utter disgust with them at this commentary. Like, my word. I'm glad I didn't bother to purchase it. The new prefect for the dicastery for the doctrine of the faith is probably a sodomite and writes books about how to kiss sensually. Are we surprised? No, not at all. It's not even just about like the individuals, but it's about like the whole network. Pope Francis, Fernando, I think that's the new guy for the dicastery. James Martin, who was personally appointed by Pope Francis to was it the Vatican Press Office, I think. Other figures as well. It's a whole network. It's very clear. I've heard the nonsense about David and Jonathan, but Naomi and Ruth, SMH. Magisterial biblical commentary at home, literally gay. Oh, it goes together. Me, it would be awesome to have a magisterial biblical commentary which can infallibly define Azazel. Magisterial biblical commentary at home, literally gay. True that. 1946 movies in the papally-approved commentary. Is this like a joke or like are you actually serious? Because if it is, that'd be freaking hilarious. Is that Michael Lofton he is telling to stay out? Oh man. Yeah. So this is nuts. Yeah, I kind of agree. Well, maybe in the past, but I honestly think today it just doesn't think it's necessary. Like I genuinely think the Roman Magisterium today has like an increasingly lower view of its own authority than like the past, to be real. Yeah. In any case, but yeah, for Rabadi Rabbit, if you can tell me where the Azazel passage is, then I will look that up, and you will get your infallible interpretation, my friend. All the evidence they have for Ruth and Naomi being lesbian was Ruth held to Naomi and said she would follow her to her death, but in reality, a statement was made because in that culture, yep, I hope I know what you're going to say because I can comment on it as well. Being Lebanese, half Lebanese myself, I can actually attest to this. After this dumpster fire, we need a stream on the St. Gallen Mafia. Oh dear. Leviticus 16:8. All right, I'll look there. Hey, Chivery Bob, good to see you, man. Good to see you. Love dunking on the papists with my Protestant brothers and sisters. Impressive. Very nice. Well, here's the thing. This one is so bad that I honestly feel like just not dunking on. Like, I do think this genuinely does pose problems for Rome itself as an institution, but it's so bad that I genuinely just want to like hug my trad friends. Like, mate, I'm so sorry that this stuff is real. I'm so sorry, mate. Have you done 1 Timothy 2:12? I will be in a second. Good to see you, by the way, my dude. Good to see you. They were pretty much dead to begin with because their husbands have died and no one will take them because they were someone's former wife. But don't worry, guys. Clearly LGBT. Well, here's the thing. The bigger point, the bigger issue is that all these scholars who write this trash, they're almost definitely all like whitey McWhiteface Europeans, all right? The problem is if you actually go to the Middle East and you see how men and women interact with each other in a non-sexual manner, it looks sexual in Europe because of how hypersexualized we are. Like, case in point, two guys hold hand in public, immediate assumption is they're gay and they're boning each other, right? two guys hold hands in public in North Africa or in certain traditional Middle Eastern areas, they're best mates. That's it. That is actually a real thing. Best friends in at least parts of the Middle East and in North Africa, and I think maybe other parts of Africa, do hold hands, and it's fine. It's not gay. It's not sexual at all. And there's other things like other things of ways of men embracing each other that in the West would be thought of it as super, super gay. But for them, it's just not sexual at all. So this is honestly just incredible. Like they love to talk so much about this intersectionality horse crap, but they won't do it on the specific areas where that actually matters, of actually saying, hang on, how would the mind of a freaking Middle Easterner actually conceive of this? And when you do that, you'd say, hey, no homo, literally no homo. But no, they have to impute their Whitey McWhiteface post-Obergefell freaking worldview degeneracy onto the text. It's shocking. It's actually shocking. Oh, interesting. You can actually see in Jeremy Brett's 1980s rendition of Sherlock Holmes, which is assiduously accurate, has one episode where Holmes walks hand in hand with Watson. Today, that's gay. And that wasn't intended as gay? Because if so, then there you go. That's my point. Only being proven. Oh, man, that's blasphemous. Anyone who says that should actually be publicly frogged, straight up. Papers here dunking too, you prot heretics. Yeah, that's why I said, like, look, it's gotten to the point where, like, I'm just wanting to hug the trads. Like, mate, I am so sorry. Yeah, exactly. Spot on, Jeff. Gay culture has destroyed close male relationships in the West. Exactly. Yeah, this is one of the things where we're all kind of united around this. Anyway, back to our regularly scheduled programming. A few people have suggested this, but here we go. 1 Timothy 2:11-15. Now, you guys, I've looked at this. You guys are going to love this. You are really going to love this one. All right. 1 Thessalonians, 2 Thessalonians, 1 Timothy. Bro, I am flicking through this thing like lightning. It's like 2,000 pages long, and I'm getting right to where I need to in like a few seconds. Actually, you know what? Okay, you know what? Hold that for a second. I'm going to go to the Azazel section first in Leviticus 16:8. I'll go to there first for the sake of Rebati Rabbit, and then we'll go to the fun one over here. Oh, man. 1 second. Just accidentally skipped it. And here we are. Okay, so bookmark there. Let's go to Leviticus. It's 2 Kings. Genesis, Leviticus. Bingo. All right. Leviticus 16. Okay. Let's talk about Azazel. So Rebati Rabbit. No, walking hand in hand was common in the Victoria era. It only declined after some high-profile prosecution of late Victorian gay underground. Interesting. Okay, interesting. Leviticus 16:8. Confirm that. Bible Azazel. Verse. Oh yeah, one for the Lord and one for Azazel. Okay, cool. Just confirming. Actually, yeah, this is in a sermon series at my church recently, so I should have just gotten that instantly. Okay. Human size, special replay. 5 animals required. Overview. Okay, here we go. 5 animals are required by the rituals. Leviticus 16:6-10 provides an overview of what will happen to them. The tradition understood the term Azazel as the name of a desert demon. However, the texts do not provide any details. For Azazel is only the final destination of the second goat, and it is located in the wilderness. So there's your infallible interpretation. We don't know. There you go, Rebati Rabbit. I hope your noose was enlightened by this commentary. Be blessed, my friend. May you Yeah. All right. Okay. Now we're going to go to the fun one. 1 Timothy 2:12, boys and girls. You guys are going to like this. Actually, it's important to preface it. I am going to preface it by reading this commentary's statements on the authorship of 1 Timothy. Or at least a bit of it, because it says a lot. Authorship. It has been suggested that Paul was using a secretary, as he often did in writing or co-authoring his letters. This secretary, however, would be so different from Paul that Paul could hardly have sent the letters as his own. The writer would be an independent author. There are greater difficulties yet in attributing these letters directly to Paul. The argumentative, often explosive style of darting questions and answers, known as diatribe, of the earlier letters has given way to a flat dictatorial style in which the author merely lays down the law. He is no longer working out the theological implications of the resurrection. Rather, he is laying down observances, regulations, and safe traditional doctrine. The firm church structure he envisages has no precedent in the loose, spirit-filled leadership community of the Corinthian community, nor in the house churches of the Roman Christians. Both of these could result from a development in Paul himself. Has he become a forgetful old man who yearns only for peace and stability? Perhaps the greatest difficulty of all is to integrate the data of these two letters with those of the Acts of the Apostles. 2 Timothy is written from prison. Is this the same captivity in Rome when Paul was in own lodgings but guarded by a soldier? Or is it a different and later captivity? The letter to Philemon was also written from captivity. Is this the same captivity? Was he released from Roman detention and enabled to fulfill his plan of journeying to Spain? 1 Clement 5:7 states that he went to the furthest bounds of the West, a rhetorical statement that may or may not have been literally correct, blah, 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 blah. Although some immediate historical connection with Paul cannot be wholly ruled out, and each of the letter contains some personal notes which seem to come from Paul, it may be safe to accept that these letters are pseudepigraphal. In the first century, it was recognized convention that a writing could be attributed to an authoritative figure from the past as a claim to authority. This occurs both within the Bible. The Wisdom of Solomon is certainly not by Solomon, but is a first century document, and outside of it, Testaments of the 12 Patriarchs, First Book of Enoch. The reputable scholars hold that several of the non-Pauline letters of the New Testament are pseudepigraphal. Thus, 2 Peter, probably the latest writing of the New Testament, is almost certainly not the work of the Apostle Peter. This is perfectly compatible with the view that it is inspired. No, I am hearing Trent Horn in this now. 2 Peter, probably the latest work of the New Testament, is almost certainly not the work of the Apostle Peter. This is perfectly compatible with the view that it is inspired. 1 Timothy and the letter to Titus are almost universally held to be pseudepigraphal. Some hold that 2 Timothy may be genuinely by Paul. It is conventionally placed after 1 Timothy not because it is later, but because it is shorter. It may have been written earlier. It belongs to a different genre of writing, the final testament of a well-known figure destined for his disciples. It is also more personal. If it is genuinely by Paul, the other two pastoral epistles could have been written later after Paul's death. They claim the authority of Paul for what the author considers would have been Paul's answers to the problems of a later age. Yeah. Oh, man. Oh, beautiful stuff. Absolutely beautiful. Have we done 1 Corinthians 6:9 yet? We have. And actually, the author doesn't even address the homosexual bit at all. He just kind of glosses over it. Got to run, gents. What a tool of a commentary. Got to drink the Kool-Aid to believe this one. Great job, the other Paul. Thank you very much, Steve-O. Good to see you. Definitely going to schedule our stream very soon. I'm keen for that. Deuteronomy 22:5. I will put a star on that. And this is to the Azazel comment. Sucks. What's the point of infallibility if it can't infallibly interpret the Bible? And again, any other Romanists watching, I know it's not infallible. We're having fun here. Excuse me. Okay. Let me just make sure. It's weird. My live chat's being a little bit weird, but either way. How do they, whoever wrote that, confirm writing is inspired? The church, I guess. 1 Peter 3:18-20. I'll star that. All right. Now, I read the bit on authorship as a prelude. It's on its own. It's just freaking incredible. But I read that as a prelude to the much requested commentary on 1 Timothy 2:12. All right. Here's what the author says about that. And remember, keep in mind what he said about the 1 Timothy being pseudepigrapha. All right. Keep that in mind. The instructions for men to focus on a suitable frame of mind. For women, the restrictions are more stringent. Not only must they be modest and simple in attire, but they must keep silent during instruction, presumably in the assembly. This is justified by the man's temporal priority in creation and the women's priority in sinning, with a grudging concession. Notice that, a grudging concession that a woman can be saved by childbearing and modesty. Such relegation of women agrees with the surface meaning of Paul in 1 Corinthians 14:34-35. See the commentary there, but is hardly consonant with the important part played by women in the Pauline communities. The deacon Phoebe carried the letter to the Romans, Romans 16:1. Priscilla played her part as a catechist with her husband, Romans 16:3, Acts 18:12, and Acts 18:2, and verses 18 to 26. Several other women in the Roman churches are congratulated for their hard work for the community, Romans 16:6-15. Such prominence of women was not abnormal in the Jewish communities of the diaspora, for several funerary inscriptions of this period exist in which women are named the president of the synagogue. The author here is considerably more repressive of women than the Paul of earlier letters. The instructions are not the last word for the changed social environment of today. Repressive. This guy's more repressive than the Paul of the other letters. He was the Yacht Queen. He loved women. He put women in positions of power. Yacht Queen. That's how I read this. Oh my word. Oh man. Reminding you, front of the book, forward by the Holy See. Will Lab. After this, Paul is going to need to detox by taking a deep breath and venerating that icon back there. Look, honestly, venerating is looking mighty tempting at this point. Oh man. If we don't know who wrote it, we can cast doubt on their claims. We can just throw out biblical claims because, someone else wrote it, not Paul. Paul loved insert modern heresy. Yeah, exactly. So 1 Peter 3:18-20. I want to see how they read spirits in prison who are disobedient in the days of Noah. My friend, you will get your certainty from the papally-approved commentary itself very soon. You do Revelation 12:1 yet? Not yet. I'll put a star on that. I'll probably have to limit how many more I'm going to do because this has gone on for a bit, and oh man, but it's juicy. It's really freaking juicy. So a while ago, to Mystic Monster, you suggested Matthew 7:13-14. Why do I expect sophistry there? Let's take a look. All right, so Matthew 7:13-14. Okay. The sermon opened with the Beatitudes, largely in the third person, followed by sayings about salt and light in the second person. Its concluding section moves in reverse order from warnings in the second person to sayings in the third person. It is marked by Matthew's characteristic moral dualism, see Deuteronomy 11:26-28 and other passages. This is evident through comparison with Luke. Whereas Luke envisages a crowd of people struggling to enter through a single narrow door, for Matthew there are two gates and two ways, one broad and one narrow. The more difficult path leads to life, i.e. the kingdom, and the easy way and broad gate lead to destruction. The Beatitudes place persecuted disciples in the company of the persecuted prophets. Now Jesus addresses the pressing theme of false prophets. The issue of false prophecy was acute for the early church, which believed the spirit of prophecy had been renewed. Some communities had their own resident prophets active in liturgical assembly. Here, wandering prophets seem presupposed, but the prophetic office could be exploited by charlatans. Like Israel's leaders in former times, they could be ravenous wolves disguised as sheep. Identifying true prophecy, identifying true prophecy calls for a pragmatic discernment based on ethical behavior. By their fruits you will know them. Good and bad fruit is a common metaphor for right and evil action. Reiterating John's fiery preaching, Jesus warns that rotten trees will be chopped down and burned. Yeah, that's pretty much that. So not a whole ton there. Look, if I wanted to do more and more, like it'd be like a 12-part series. Like, look, honestly. Oh man. There you go. Yep. All right. Oh man. It's only the morning, but I'm getting tired already. I need breakfast soon. Okay. Matthew 23, Abel to Zechariah, coming right up. And it'd be a good one too if you're checking the seat of Moses. What? Matthew's seat of Moses. Matthew 23. Okay, great. All right, so let's go to Matthew 23. Matthew 23. I'm just going to look at the verses just to make able. So that's verse 35. Seats in Moses' seat. Okay, that's right at the beginning. So right at the beginning and then verse 35. Let's take a look at that. All right. Okay. So the discourse begins by acknowledging the scribes and the Pharisees' authoritative position. They have taken their seat on the chair of Moses, either an actual seat in the synagogue on which they sat and read the Torah, the desk from which the Torah scroll was read, or a metaphor for their teaching authority. Jesus' criticism of them is somewhat obscured by the NABRE's translation, for they preach, but they do not practice. Unless Jesus is speaking ironically, this contradicts early condemnations of distinctive Pharisaic interpretation, and this warning against the teaching of both Pharisees and Sadducees. And the point may be rather that the scribes and Pharisees have the monopoly on accessing and reading aloud the scrolls of the Torah. They speak, but they do not do. Thus, Jesus' disciples are to observe Mosaic words that they speak, but not to follow their distinctive halakoth, which undermine the performance of what Moses demanded. They are also condemned for their misguided motivation. All their works are performed to be seen. These warnings also have Christological dimension. Their interpretations of the Torah, especially what they bind or forbid, are heavy burdens placed on people's shoulders. By contrast, Jesus invites his disciples to shoulder a burden which is light. Their phylacteries or tefillin, boxes attached to hand and forehead containing the words of the Torah, are ostentatiously broad, and they lengthen the tassels of their prayer shawls. That Matthew calls tefillin phylacteries, i.e. amulets, may imply a superstitious use. By implication, Jesus' followers are to wear modest tefillin and tassels. Jesus' tassels function not as exaggerated signs of piety, but as vehicles of healing. Yeah, interesting. So that is kind of interesting because, again, it doesn't seem to answer the vagueness of like what the seat of Moses meant. Like they think they basically take an all thing like could be the authority of Moses, but then also like a literal seat from which they read the Torah. What's interesting though is that the comments here seem to say that the Pharisees' power of halakhic teaching of binding and loosing actually contravenes in the mind of Jesus the intention of Moses, which is very interesting because we're told in the apologetics world that Jesus is affirming that the rabbis have this power, just that they're kind of abusing it. But here we have the author of the Papally-Approved Biblical Commentary saying the opposite. So yeah, very interesting. All right, let's go to Abel and Zechariah. Okay. Okay. The slaughter of Abel played an important role in Jewish martyr theology as the paradigm of innocent blood crying out for vindication. Matthew traces a bloodline from Abel throughout Israel's history down to Zechariah, the son of Berechiah. The latter's identity is unclear. The reference conflates the prophet Zechariah, son of Berechiah, with Zechariah, the son of Jehoiada, who was killed in the temple court. The latter, though a priest, could be reimagined as a prophet since he was killed for speaking the word of the Lord. Less plausible are patristic attempts to identify him with Zechariah, the father of John the Baptist. Very interesting. I've heard some people. I don't know if it was other papal apologists or something, but I think I've heard them try to argue that patristic interpretation is the right one. I'm just gonna get some gum quickly. But yeah, that's interesting. So, commentary recognizes there may be a conflation here, the conflation of Jehoiada, but also tries to argue that maybe there isn't, maybe Matthew, not Jesus, of course, but Matthew may think the one killed at the temple was kind of like a prophet. But yeah, there you go. Unfortunately, doesn't speak about canon issues with the reference, so there you go. I'll unstar that. All right. Oh, this is good. Genesis 1:1, and what's so funny about it is how it's right at the beginning of the commentary, like the first thing you see. I actually looked at what the author says about Genesis 1:1, and oh boy, I knew what was going to happen when I saw who the author for the Genesis section was, and it's Mark S. Smith, who Roman Catholic scholar, but very much redaction criticism guy. El and Yahweh were separate gods in the Torah, and then they were eventually combined. Like that's him. That's Mark S. Smith. So I knew when I saw his name over the Genesis commentary, we were going to be in for a really freaking fun one. Ooh. All right. Okay. Again, right, the first opening lines of the commentary in Genesis 1:1. For many scholars, Genesis 1-2 originally consisted of two separate parallel accounts consisting of Genesis 1:1-2:3 and 2:4b to 24, with Genesis 2:4a as a hinge or connecting verse added by a redactor, arguably a priestly hand. Accordingly, humanity is created first in 1:26-28, and then again in 2:7. In context, the two creation counts have been linked to forge a new whole or secondary unity. The first account focuses on the heavens and the earth, in contrast to the second describing the making of the earth and the heavens. The two are tied together by a reversal of word order forming a chiasm, a crossing pattern of two sets of words named after the Greek letter chi. The order of the nouns also points to respective emphasis on the two accounts. The first begins above with heavens, while the second begins on earth. While the two accounts show significantly different theologies, their literary linkage suggests that they are to be understood not as antithetical, but as complementary expressions of God, humanity, and the world. Genesis 1:1-2:3 was perhaps written as an introduction to 2:4b to 24 in order to provide theological balance. Now, here's where it gets better. The very first word of Genesis, Bereshit, literally in beginning of, is not a prepositional phrase, in the beginning, as often rendered. It starts a when clause, a temporal clause, quote, when at first God created the heavens and the earth. Such when clauses, followed by then clauses, here probably in verse 3, are known in other major literary works outside the Bible, including other creation accounts. See the when clause in 2:4a for the syntax. See Jeremiah 7:22 and Hosea 1:2. Verse 1 tells the time of creation, a divine process that does not commence until verse 3. The waters in verse 2 are already present at the beginning of God's creation. Thus, contrary to popular belief, Genesis 1 does not narrate the absolute beginning of everything. Forming nice alliteration with Bereshit, the verb to create is reserved for the deity. God in verse 1 functions as a divine name, although technically it is not a name. It derives from the plural form of the generic word of God. Thus, this term for God might be regarded as expressing the fullness of divinity or a plural of majesty. The heavens and earth together stand with the totality of the universe. Yeah. Right at the start of the commentary. Oh, no. It doesn't describe the beginning of everything. It's just the water's pre-existing, guys. Trust me, bro. I said so. I'm a scholar. Okay, mate. Good to see you. Good to see you. Oh, man. But yeah. That's this commentary. That's this commentary. Far out. I'm getting absolutely knackered right now. We're already an hour and a half through, and I need to get on with the day, including breakfast. So I'm gonna take a look at one more. I'll take a look at one more. Sorry that I couldn't get to everyone, but I hope this was still entertaining. One moment. Looking up these passages to see which ones I want to do. This commentary seems totally patristic and definitely not heretical. Probably not heretical. Absolutely. Definitely probably not heretical. All right. 2 Thessalonians 2:15. Let's do that. One of the classic papal proof texts. All right. The closing verses of chapter 2, primarily made up of ethical exhortations, serve to conclude the author's argumentation in a positive way. After having successfully refuted this community's mistaken position, he now urges them to remain faithful to the traditions that the apostles themselves first gave them. The ominous warnings in 2:3-12 now give way to two poignant prayers that bookend a series of exhortations. Nothing really much else about the Oh, hang on. Here we go. Both here and in Colossians, it is used to encourage the communities in question to conserve the traditions, paradosis, and doctrines they first received from the apostles. The noun paradosis designates a technical body of teaching passed on by the apostles, as in 1 Corinthians 11:2, where this term denotes the teaching regarding the Lord's Supper. That's interesting. So, technical body of teaching passed down by the apostles. So, yeah, there you go. In other words, everyone agrees with that. It's not especially papal, boys and girls. You should donate it for a good video to Lofton for a good video. Oh dear, man. Oh dear. Okay, I'll do one more for my man Chivery Bob here. 1 Peter 3:18-20. Oh, look at that! Right at 1 Peter. Okay. Okay. Let me just look it up really quickly for myself. 3:18. Okay, here we go. All right. Peter then gives a cosmic interpretation of Jesus' death and resurrection as God's intervention into the human situation. By means of Jesus' self-gift in love and obedience, a way opened for all to be freed from sin. Jesus' death and resurrection establishes a new world where all humankind can belong to God. Peter tells suffering Christians that even though Jesus suffered in the flesh, he was made alive in the spirit. Jesus experienced excruciating death, but did not remain in the bonds of death. He has been raised and is alive in the spirit. In Jewish tradition, Noah's time was marked by spirits in prison and sinfulness such that God's anger was roused to destroy and recreate. Even to these, the risen Lord proclaims that God has done. A few were saved through water, which, Peter claims, prefigures baptism and embeds Christians into the mystery of Christ's death and resurrection. There you go. All right. Look at some final comments from people here. It would be better if they hadn't bothered to publish it. So true. All right. Yeah, sorry, mate. A little bit late now, but I think I am going to call it now, ladies and gentlemen. This has been a nice roller coaster of a foray into the Jerome Biblical Commentary. Again, approved by the Pope himself. And I think it should be a good avenue for dialogue and spice with our Romanist friends. So, if you have the money and if this is a real area of interest for you, pick up this commentary and take a gander at what the Pope has approved for biblical interpretation. And which, by the way, as Dr. James White himself mentioned, you might not be able to see it here, but it has the nihil obstat, nothing stands in the way, no objections, no errors, basically, and the imprimatur, the permission to print, both from the Archdiocese of Chicago. Combined with the Pope's own foreword, this is the closest thing we have to a authoritative papal interpretation of the whole Bible. And it's not good. It's not. So, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, so much for coming along to this fun stream. Thank you, gentlemen. I'm glad you all enjoyed it. Yes, and do keep in tabs. I'll have a blog post about this commentary coming up, which will include some of the doozies that we read together in this stream. Also, my interview with Christian Wagner next week. Go take a look at that. And my video on the annals of the Christian world. Again, taking me a little bit of time, but it's coming very soon, as well as, God willing, more frequent videos after that. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely day or evening. God bless.